started. We started initially talking about data and student data and tracking of student data in a general way, a general conversation. And we came upon a recurrent point, which is that oftentimes for many people, data is scary. And so we wanted to hone in on that for teachers and for teachers specifically, and find out why it was so scary, what their experience with data was. So what we found out was that teachers are spending hours and hours entering data into programs and grade books, and that data is then being taken off to the administrative level. And it's the only thing that students are experiencing from this data is a single letter, which is their grade. And so we formulated a problem that data was not being shared, maybe we can't read that, or translated in meaningful ways to students, and our customer segment was through teachers. So we called some teachers, and we found out a couple of interesting things. First of all, as I said, teachers track the data that are required by their administration, but that data doesn't meaningfully contribute to student learning in most cases. So what ended up happening was that teachers were tracking two sets of data, one for their administration and one for their students' progress. And so this second set of data, which is arguably the most important in student learning, was being skipped for time constraints. There were varying levels of what people did. Some people were not doing it at all. They just had an idea in their head of where their students were and they were going. And some people had developed elaborate student tracking systems, but those took a lot of time, and that was at the expense of other things like sleep or food or the gym. And so then the question is, well, does it matter? Does it matter that that teachers are not sharing this data with their students in a meaningful way? And so we honed in on the teachers who were using these methods, because all of the teachers that we talked to said either that they had developed a system to some degree, or they wanted to. They recognized that it was really important, but they weren't because of aforementioned time issues. And so those teachers who were not just tracking student progress, but involving their students in the tracking of their own progress, saw increases in engagement, student ownership of the material, understanding, and overall, most importantly, academic performance. And if that's our goal, that's where we wanted to go. So instead of having teachers being stretched between the administrative numbers that are required that schools need to keep themselves open and running, and poor confused students who only understand their grades in terms of a single letter, we thought, what if we had a digitally integrated, teacher-centered data progress tracking system that both met the needs of the administration and also helped to promote student engagement, student ownership, and ultimately student achievement. And so we came up with something that could maybe look like this. So this would be what the student and parent end would look like. Typically, what you would see in a grade book is A, or I use P because we do standards-based grading. It would be available for standards-based grading, so that would be for proficient. And typically, this is all you would get. But we envisioned a system where students were then able to click on their chemistry grade and see some fancy charts that were very meaningful to them in their growth. These charts would be able to be tailored to each teacher. So whatever's important to me that my students are paying attention to, I would put into their portal for each class, and then they would be able to see there's each of the standards or each assignment or whatever, okay? So then they'd go in, click into the standards, and they would be able to see each of their assignments that were missing or you know, any sort of breakdown, again, at the teacher's discretion of what they want to show. But the other feature here, when you went in, teachers would be able to actually upload those documents. So for the tests that they got advanced on, instead of you know, giving the paper to the student, they would just take a picture, scan it, upload it. Then students would be able to go back in and say, hey, look, there's my advanced test, or there's my test that I got proficient on, and I'd like to bring it up to advanced. What did I do wrong? What didn't I do wrong? As well as increasing ownership in students' learning, they could be putting up those documents themselves. So they could be entering things in. They could go through, I mean, we even talked about if you have all of your upcoming assignments preloaded, precocious students could be going at their own pace and uploading their work before you even have gotten to it as a class. So the result would be happy administrators, because they get the data that they need, happy teachers, and happy students and parents. So
go back to slide time. He talks about also, from like this aspect where like we're trying to get parents on the same page as teachers and students are. So like the idea that you can log on here as a parent and understand, like, because we don't want the student to be focused on like A, B, C, or D. We want them to be focused on the idea that learning is a process and understand the areas where they're struggling, and not what can I, so it's what can I do to get better at this, not what can I do to get an A or a B. So you could log on here as a parent and understand the exact areas in, say, algebra or pre-calc where your son or your daughter is struggling, and get on and click. So if it says like on standard 1.1 this student has a 0%, you could click on it, and if no work popped down, you would understand that your student doesn't understand that because your son or your daughter either has not been doing the work for that subject or that standard, or your teacher is not using this the way they're supposed to be doing it. So the idea that like you as a parent can know exactly where, like what skills your son or your daughter is struggling with, so you can tell your son or your daughter, like you need to go to your teacher and you need to tell them you need help with this specific, like, two-step equation. So they know, instead of going to their teacher and asking like, what can I do to get an A or B, they say, I'm not very good at two-step equations, what can I do to get better at it?
Likewise, a student can go in and see a paper that's been graded, that didn't get good marks on, rewrite it, upload it, you know, take a picture, upload it, ask the teacher, hey, look at this, I've rewritten that, and have a lot more ownership in the process. I think there's also a capability that papers can be graded right online, either through Google Docs. We had one teacher in one of you who had all our students submitting everything, so it's really streamlined. So students are submitting it, it's being graded, it's all done through this interface. And for, you know, maybe for technology not available to write and submit that way, that even work that's done on paper can still be snapshotted and sent in. Trying to streamline that process between the students and the teachers, but also having a nice portfolio, substantial portfolio of the work and tracking the progress over the course of the.
Okay, let's open it up for questions.